Our next speaker, Joel Eagle, is going to be teaching us how McDonald's created a digital-first customer experience. I think it's fun because Joel's background in McDonald's feels personal to many of us. So I invite you, hold in your mind's eye your favorite item to order at McDonald's and or your favorite memory from McDonald's. Then most people have like, oh man, I remember I was on a road trip with Grandpa Joe and I begged and begged and begged and begged, and there may have been tears involved, but we stopped at the Golden Arches. All right, Joel Eagle. Over the past 5 years, McDonald's has made one of the most ambitious digital transformations in the quick service restaurant industry. It shifted from legacy infrastructure to a modern cloud environment, which enables personalized customer experiences across more than 40,000 restaurants. But with that innovation came complexity, a sprawling multi-cloud environment, globally distributed services, and pressure to meet customers' expectations for real-time service. Joel is going to share how the team met these challenges with a new approach, autonomous cloud management. He is not only the sniper director of technology and architecture of the Golden Arches. This is fun. I learned this doing some research on Joel. He's considering adding director of GSD, get done, to his resume. Joel is also a race car driver. I think Porsche is his car of choice, and he has circumnavigated the globe more than 5 times, all by plane, yeah? No sailing? Excellent. Please welcome to the stage Joel Eagle.
Big green. Right there? Just big green one. Big green one, okay. Thank you. Thanks for that warm welcome. Now, I didn't realize when you stand up here, I can't see anybody in the back row. So you can make signs, do anything you want. Like, it's going to be interesting.
The cheering section's outrageous.
The cheering section, got it. All right, we don't want to dwell on the opening slide for a second. I want you to look at the picture that you see. The picture, that's me, believe it or not. So I like the question you just asked. You said, if you could go back in time, what would you do? That's me starting the cloud journey. This is me after the cloud journey. Okay. I was supposed to, by the way, retire from McDonald's 2 years ago. Family circumstances forced me to, pretty much make that decision. But it's a good thing. It's a good situation. But if I could go back in time, I think I would have quit while I was ahead, right? And spent the next 2 years trying to get back to that guy. He's in here somewhere. I just got to find him. But that's me a couple years ago. Yeah. So drove cloud adoption. When I first took over for infrastructure, corporate didn't have anything in the cloud, nothing. In fact, there were any lawyers in the room? There were lawyers standing at the gate. Thou shalt not pass, right? You are not going to cloud. It's not going to happen. Never, ever will ever happen. So imagine the internal upheaval we went through to get that going. So went to the cloud. We didn't go for all of the reasons that cloud promised, although we suffered all of the pains of the promises that weren't met. Why did McDonald's go to the cloud? At the time, McDonald's is a highly leveraged organization. We have managed service providers that manage a lot of the infrastructure and the people who manage them. That was the way it was early on. These managed service providers would procure infrastructure for us, and then they would lease space in data centers that they didn't own to place that infrastructure. So whenever this happened when Delta did their data center, whenever someone decided to own that data center, they wanted more of their space, they would kick us out. And this would cause, at the very least, just upheaval, IP address changes, things like that. The infrastructure, it's a problem. The second thing is, if your managed service provider isn't performing well, what can you do? They kind of have you hostage. So our decision to go to the cloud was to de-risk the situation we were in with certain managed service providers and or the whims of someone who needed their data center more than we did. So that's the reason. That's what drove us there. That focus, the reason for that then talks about what was the strategy to do that, right? We'll get into some of this. So the strategy was get there. The strategy was lift and shift. It wasn't refactor applications. It was like get that stuff out of data centers and get it to the cloud. Now you can imagine if that's what your go-in mantra is, costs are going to run amok. Security's having a fun day with you. There's a lot of things that go on with that. Today I'll talk a little about visibility, observability, predictability. I'm going to ask something of you. I need a little bit of poetic license. This is the world according to Joel, not smart people like you. So I'm going to define some terms later on in the presentation. I ask that you give me poetic license. Don't grit your teeth too much when I don't define it the way you do, just so you know that. So when you think about what McDonald's needed, Ray Kroc was the founder of McDonald's. If you haven't seen that movie, The Founder, it's kind of fun. I would say most of it's true. You know, Ray Kroc has a famous saying. He only wanted to see two things on the counter of a restaurant: money and food. And he would say we could run our restaurant. I think he said cigar box. We clean it up now and say shoe box, I think. But the reality is you cannot run anything retail today that way. You cannot run retail with an old cash register and product coming out the back. Even if it's a matter of automated inventory, think about the logistics of supply chain in 120 countries, 40,000 restaurants, et cetera. You just simply can't do it. Now, then add to that the digital platforms that come along. McDonald's, I remember I was there the night we launched the global mobile app out into the wild. We had literally, I don't know if you guys know what crazy cars are, electric go-karts running around the floor and stuff like that. We're having a good day. You know, it was an interesting launch. The issue we had was, what's the demand going to be? How many people are going to download this thing and use this thing? How many, what we had to build for some certain expectations when we built this system. Born in the cloud, that system born in the cloud. All legacy stuff, followed it. But what was it going to be like? It was an interesting thing to think about. So we built big. The plan was go big because we'd rather it work versus fail, right? I don't know if you remember when, I'm going to date myself a little bit. Obamacare, I know what Obamacare is. When it first started, they had a website, fell on its face. When we first started doing it, not Obama's fault, but the point is, he's opened up, hey, it's going to be a big thing, resident insurance, and the thing died. We didn't want that experience for our customers. McDonald's will fear the reputation more than they will the money when it comes to that. It's more about the reputation on that in that particular part. So what do we want to do? Kiosk is a great example of, we want to put kiosk in stores. And any McDonald's, by the way, so most McDonald's, they're owned by, if you own a McDonald's, that's your store. You can decide if a kiosk comes in your store or not within reason. You can decide if you put a new look on your store or not within reason. But those are your employees, that's your store, etc. A lot of people didn't want to use the stores. I'll give you a little bit of inside information on the kiosk. For whatever reason, I don't know why this is, but people who order at the kiosk have an average check 6% higher than if you order by any other means. I don't know why that is. Maybe complexity feel like that, but for whatever reason, if you buy from that kiosk, you generally spend 6% more money than if you go to the front counter. Needless to say, that was literally the selling point for the kiosk. All this one, once we figured this out, France was actually the country that put them in first. Now you see them everywhere, right? It was a revenue generator. Meeting massive global demand. If you think about, we built this big monolithic thing. We rushed into the cloud. It's basically like a land grab. Engineers could grab as much resources as they wanted to. They had a lot of autonomy to build things, create things. This led to the sprawl I mentioned earlier, persistent workloads, stuff people, like, I don't know if you have kids, maybe you're guilty of doing it yourself. They go home, turn every light on, leave the house, every light's still on. Every server's still running, right? Every app that ever started, it was like a government program. It was all kept running everywhere. Budget overruns. For McDonald's at the time, I remember I got called to a room one time when we were trying to solve a problem. We were started running about $2 million a month over budget. That became 10, that became 15. This gets attention, right? You had to solve some of those problems. And I like the little phrase, DevOps, in my world, from an operations perspective, is 99% dev and 1% ops. FinOps, never heard of it. SecOps, they weren't bothered with it, right? Feature, function, benefit. That's what all the companies were being rewarded for, and naturally, that's what they did. This led to a lot of, let's call it issues. Like, I remember one time somebody put credentials out on GitHub. It's not a good thing, right? That we have out there. We went in blind. We went into the cloud thinking we're going to use native as possible. We're going to use our traditional stack. We'll get out a little bit later in terms of what we were using for visibility. And again, I'll define what I mean by visibility. For us, it was more about, we need to get to the cloud for de-risk situation. We need it for scale. We built big. Now we've got budget cost overruns. We got security issues. We had pipelines. I kid you not. We had pipelines that we didn't have visibility to. Our managed service provider, DevOps program people had that. So we had to get a handle on that. So I'm painting this picture of it was our salvation, which became the next new paradigm of problems for McDonald's. And oh, by the way, I don't know how to go back. Go back to this one. Is this one? Can I go back? That picture, the little girl right there. I was fortunate enough to be in Vietnam. That was February 2014 when we opened up Vietnam. First country that we opened in 10 years. Prior to that McDonald's opened, and I was fortunate enough to be there for that. That day, first drive-through in the country, 7,000-ish people came through the drive-through. 23,000 people showed up to have food. And they did that every day for the next several weeks, right? That came into the restaurant. It's a big deal there. We had, at the opening of McDonald's, I met the Prime Minister of Vietnam. I mean, it was that big, right? Kind of a big deal to bring it to the market. But it gave, I told people back at the office, for the people at McDonald's who went there to witness that, you got a different perspective of just opening McDonald's in the Walmart down the street, right? I mean, there's a different, concept of what McDonald's is in different parts of the world. But that really hit home for me. That said, what's our purpose? What are we doing? Why are we in the cloud? Why do we build these things? Yes, we want to make money, but it's to make little girls happy halfway around the world. That's our mission. That's what we do, right? That's the outcome of what we're trying to do. I like this story about your favorite experience. By the way, any of you interviewing for a job at McDonald's, you're going to get asked your favorite menu item, and you're going to get asked your favorite experience. So if you don't have one of those, get one. If you want a job at McDonald's. All right, building the digital platform in stages. Create the platform. We had to build something from scratch. We had to decide where to put it. Put it on-prem. Where are we going to put this thing? AWS, we went through the rigmarole of should it be in Azure, should it be on-prem, should it be AWS? Right? At the end of the day, it's AWS. AWS was a thing back then, but certainly not now. Why did we say AWS? Well, I remember talking to the vice presidents at the time who said things like, the cloud will never go down. The cloud will always be, and we'll have plenty of, it's this free range, or have everything you want. I remember talking to a VP and I said, they only have 3 nines. Am I wrong today? AC2 is still 99.9, right? Is anybody no different? It's only like 3 nines. We had an interesting scenario happen not too long after this VP said that, because Murphy's Law is full effect. So do you remember, anybody here remember when S3 went down? Amazon's S3 went down several years ago? Man, you guys are young. Okay. S3 at McDonald's, S3 at Amazon at the time, in fact check me, had the highest number of nines in any AWS service. So somebody, a wonderful engineer, trying to do the right thing, said for cost purposes, we should put this routing table thing on S3. And it introduced S3 as a critical path to our environment. When it went down, the powers, my job, by the way, is to explain to the powers that be why, how, what heads have to roll, et cetera. I said, well, what did you expect? What did you expect to happen when we added a critical path? So I got news for you. Little insight about me. I went to Catholic school when I was younger, and I had a particular sister, Sister Bernadette, taught me how to multiply and how to add. And I said to the CIO at the time, I said, according to Sister Bernadette, any number less than 1 times another number less than 1 is less than both numbers. Okay? So my point is, if you have 9s, which are less than 1, times 9s, because you get another critical path, you have less availability now when you added this infrastructure. They're all looking at me like, that's just logic, right? We learned that in the 4th grade. But somehow we forget when we start applying things. I'm going to give you just as an example of saying, well, what happened? And somebody made that decision and what was betted on. It wasn't betted on how many 9s. It wasn't vetted that way. It wasn't looked at that way. But that was the thinking when we went in there, reduce the cost that way, things like that. That's just an anecdotal information of what happens when things go wrong, and then we have to explain it. The thing we'll do is we understand the demand. That was for McDonald's example is we have this thing called day part. Earlier today, we had an example of someone talked about the demand was 600,000 customers come on that one day. I used to work for a global logistics company, and Black Friday and what is it, Cyber Monday. These were our big days of the year. I'm going to get some numbers later, but at McDonald's, and I'm not taking anything away from the big day in the year, 600,000 people do this every day. Every day. 70 million people visit McDonald's every single day. 600,000 do digital orders every day, right? This is, we built a system to do 400,000 transactions like a second. Because every time you look a menu thing like that, it creates a transaction, not an order, but a transaction, right? So think about the scale of how that has to work. And by the way, all of our owner-operators, let's say you, if you own a restaurant, you expect it to work all, you're not into 9s, you're into on and off, 1 and 0. Right? That's what all that matters to you, right? So we had to build to that. Optimized performance then became how do we scale? I gave an example. I think I was talking to Vanita or something earlier where, sure, we started to come off that. We re-architected the platform, started to reduce the size of the monolithic thing. We tried to use some services that let us expand the capacity. During some day parts at McDonald's, breakfast, lunch, dinner is a day part. During some day parts, we will outstrip the ability for Amazon to provide the compute. In other words, it won't keep up. So if you're running at 90% and you think you're going to hit the demand curve for, say, lunch or breakfast, and you're going to add compute to your environment to keep up with the demand, it's not going to happen. Demand's going to come so fast like a tidal wave for that part of the day. You have to run at something like 70% or something like that. You have to have some margin on hand before you can just push yourself over there to it. These are things that we discovered and changed the way we think about what's efficient. So when I think about something like a Sedai going to do some automation, it's going to have to figure that sort of thing out, right? When we think about what AI needs to be able to do in order to understand what our demand curves are, what our usage is, things like that. I can't tell you the number of companies that walked into McDonald's and said, Joel, we just want to save you money and we'll only charge you the money we save you. It's, okay, prove it. To date, no one's done it. Not think of all the big consulting firms. No one has been able to do it. Not even AWS when they do their war, the architecture reviews coming into, nobody's been able to do it because of our unique demand models, things like that. AI is going to be, in my view, the only thing that's going to be able to pull it off. So the numbers I talked about earlier, wrong slide. Sorry, I'm on this slide. Sorry. You're on, I think I'm skipping a slide. Sorry. The path. So this might be interesting to you. So when we first went in there, this is where we talk about, we went in with platform monitoring tools. So your network monitored by Cisco, Palo Alto. We have all the tools that monitor various platforms. From there, we started looking in, leveraging the native cloud monitoring platforms. So I get better at that. This increased our visibility. Application monitoring platforms, New Relic, all the APM stuff that you think is out there. We use a lot of New Relic. Another inside note: if you're running the McDonald's app on your phone, there's New Relic code in that. Integration, we started really, when I took over and built out SMO 2 years ago, we were at application monitoring tools, but no one was looking at them. No one in infrastructure was looking at any of the stuff coming into telemetry, coming in from the APM. Why, I don't know. It could have been a political thing, but one of the first things I did was pull the APM into our panes of glass and the visibility with us, and then add to that integration event correlation tool. So this is where I would say we claimed a bit of AI ops, certainly with our leadership, but this is where we use things like MoveSoft to look at CloudWatch and look at the telemetry coming in from New Relic, so that when New Relic said, hey, your transactions have stopped, and you see these changes that came across in CloudWatch to correlate for us, this outcome over here, no more transactions, and this change here, high probability that they're cause and effect. I can promise you now, a little insight, we had such an outage where by the way, we went from an AWS, we now have Amazon Managed Services managing the infrastructure in AWS for McDonald's. Somebody in the AMS world, we'll leave nameless, decided one day to push a code out, push some code out across our environment. When they did that, they used an old portal, and their native portal, we weren't using their portal at the time, broke our global mobile app immediately all around the world. So no digital transactions all around the world. I can tell you another piece of information. That's not millions of dollars an hour. That's millions of dollars in the minutes. We measured that in the minutes, right? So all around the world, GMA stopped. Immediately, we had our correlation engine say to us, within about, I'd say, a minute to about a minute and a half, all those things that just went crazy over there is probably related to this thing that this engineer just changed on this portal. Now, like all good engineers, you make your change, you don't see the lights go off, you go home, you go to sleep. So we couldn't find this engineer, but our software told us exactly who, exactly when, and exactly what. So our other engineers would be able to reverse engineer what that particular person did, and we had the whole thing back up in about half an hour. We estimate that outage would have cost us, without an integration or correlation event tool, that outage would have probably taken 6 to 8 hours. I can assure you that the person who made the change, who was, by the way, considered decent high up on their engineering, would no longer be an AWS employee if that integration tool was not in place. One of the things I think I meant to, I was talking to somebody, maybe it was Tim or someone else, the last time I got called into an office by the CIO to talk about an outage, I think AWS had a power outage in US East, you guys probably remember that. When I got to the room, when I got to the CIO's room in the conference room, I came from the war room up to there, and he said, Amazon is telling me everything's up. Well, EC2 was up, but all the services weren't up, and we need the whole stack to run. When I got to the room, it was Andy Jassy on the phone. It was Andy Jassy telling McDonald's Amazon is up, and I had to tell my leadership, I don't want to say Andy's wrong, but problem is you need the full stack, and the full stack isn't there. But that's the level of visibility that McDonald's gets. I'm not throwing that out there to name drop. I'm throwing it out there to say it gets a lot of attention when things go wrong. Hence, I can tell you that individual wouldn't be at AWS had that continued. Then there's the AIOps piece. Well, that's the future, where we're going, right? We're dabbling in the AIOps now. What I'll tell you is in order to run efficient for us, when we think about the day parts, in order to think about reducing outages, yes, we have to do a lot with change management. Yes, we do a lot with service management organizations. We do a lot with forensics. We do all of those things that we put in. I was speaking last night. We implemented this thing called credit scores. So if you want to make changes, you got to have a certain credit score with us. It's based on whether or not you break something, right, or do something right. Would you get issued like a bit of a credit score? Determines how much autonomy you get, in terms of making changes. But really, all of that is a human's attempt at trying to corral and control what's happening in a chaotic environment that we do on our best day. We're lucky. We're way more lucky than we are good at doing this. Every time we have a major out or had a major outage, and I would have to explain to leadership, I'm like, you need to understand, every day is like running through a minefield. Today we hit a mine. It's a wonder we don't hit a mine every day, right? Based on what we do. And that's how complex and crazy the environment is. This is not an environment that I believe in going forward in the future, particularly with growth, that you can manage any other way than to have some intelligence, not just looking at APM platforms and filtering for you. I heard someone earlier say, so that humans can get involved in a decision. At some point, you've got to let go. At some point, you just have to say, let this thing do its thing, because it's doing it better. I like the Suresh said, the self-driving car, the self-driving cloud. Love that, by the way. I'm a big fan of the self-driving cars. But when you can show data, you guys are engineers, when your data says that the autonomy is better than you, let it go. Let the autonomy do that. Take the leap of faith then, right? If you want to turn from a Kierkegaard perspective and make it happen. All right, now, numbers. Digital loyalty program. So what's the result of us implementing those AI platforms, or the AI ops platforms we talked about, the visibility we have? I heard someone, the gentleman on the call earlier, were talking about having, response, or they have weekly or daily ops meetings where we talk about changes and things that they want to have. We implement all the protocol. We do all those sorts of things. We track, action items and all that sort of stuff. Result of that is, what's not up here is when SMO was a fledgling thing and we went to built out SMO, the mantra was the digital platform needs to just work. The owner operators were calling the CEO, creating problems. The digital platform must work. We had something in the neighborhood of 75 P1s the first year I got a hold of it. Something in the neighborhood of 275 hours of outage. Remember I said millions per minute, and I'm getting hours of outage. Everyone was screaming and said, what are we going to do about that? Meanwhile, McDonald's is trying to grow. It's by far in the restaurant space the largest loyalty program. It is the 4th largest loyalty program in the world, bar none, bar anybody. Based on active users in the past 90 days, it's number 4 on the planet, period, right? Remember, 70 million people a day, hundreds of thousands of transactions going on. And our owner operators, if you own a restaurant in, I don't know, Milwaukee or Hyderabad or wherever, you just expect it to work all the time, right? Because your customers coming through there. We run about, or at least coming towards the end of the year, we're running around 97.3% availability, something like that, 98% availability. I mentioned this the other night at dinner, but every 0.1% of availability is $10 to $13 million to corporate. So that's $130 million of sales. And then McDonald's cut of that would be $13 million coming into McDonald's for every 0.1%. When I was able to explain to leadership, that's what the value of a 0.1% is. And the outage situation, the things we had, then the funding came, to create incident commander teams. Like we have one in Sydney, one in London, one in Chicago, round the clock handoff, our own incident commanders that are in charge when an outage happens, right? There's no who's in charge. There's no, well, what do we do? I mean, imagine if you walked into an emergency room at a hospital. I mean, do you want them to try to figure out who's in charge? Do you want them to try to figure out what to do? And by the way, all they care about when you show up at the ER is visibility, not observability. Visibility. Are you breathing? Do you have a pulse? Telemetry, right on you. They're not really paying attention a whole lot to behavior, right? You're distressed and things like that. But visibility. $25 billion in annual revenue, that's what we do digitally. That's the digital contribution to McDonald's is roughly, it's actually more now, but $25 billion. I was mentioning at the table earlier. I want to say this, and I mean this in a good way. COVID was a terrible thing, but McDonald's crushed it during COVID, just crushed it, because our business is 70% drive-through in the US. We were able to put the plexiglass, we were able to respond quick. We had delivery established by then. I mean, McDonald's in the US crushed it. And then of course the 70 million customers that come to McDonald's every day. So let's get into some of the, real quick on the isms, the abilities, right? What do I call visibility at the beginning? This is telemetry. up, down, statefulness, CPU, memory, the things we talked about before. Do we know what those are? And can we correlate those to impending issues that happen? We moved from that, when I took over that, to focus on observability. What's the difference? Joelism, poetic license. Observability is behavior. I know how the thing is behaving, not just how it's performing in terms of individual components. So example is, we have a dash. The only dashboard I put up to show leadership was, it looked like we took a dashboard, we put one standard deviation above and below what our expected volume was supposed to be for that day, to give it every minute by minute, and then we plotted the actual. And I made that thing a blue stripe, and it kind of went like this. And I used to tell leadership, if your boat is in the river, you're fine. If your boat is outside the river, I'm one standard deviation away from where I expect to be. I don't know why. I don't know what the telemetry is telling me, but my behavior is telling me something's wrong. And we would immediately open up potential critical issues and go source the problem. And in that way, stop the number of things we're becoming, actual issues that were outages. Not everything, but some of it. Future is we have to be able to accurately predict when that's going to happen. That we don't have just yet, right? We could figure out quickly the why of it and watch the behavior, but we didn't have that. That's where an SI thing comes in. Key takeaway for all that, in Joel's belief, Joel's opinion, autonomous management is the only way we're going to be able to manage the ever-increasing complexity, and not only that, power the growth so we can allow people to do more things, knowing our autonomous management is going to put the bumpers up and keep us going down the straight and narrow. Without autonomous management, what are you going to do? You're going to add more human beings to this. You're not going to get it. There's a diminishing return on that. Where from an AI perspective, I don't see that we've hit an issue where there's diminishing returns on what we're able to do if we can do it autonomously, particularly if we can get to this prediction point.
You just got a stadium whistle. I told you the crowd was amazing. Questions for Joel?
No questions? Yes. Oh, sorry, we have to get you there. By the way, if you're going to ask me why in a box of chicken nuggets, one of them always looks like Louisiana, I don't know.
No. Actually, I was going to ask mainly about the mobile app. Being a heavy user myself at certain times, not currently, but at certain times in my life.
3 a.m. I know. I've been there.
That's all right. No, it's a safe space. What was the idea behind you? Or if you can speak to the logic, right? Like coming to McDonald's was pretty much a given. You already had your ideas, been there for generations. Going to McDonald's you had a stable base of customers. Then you added this app, and then for me, triggered a whole different set of emotional response in now, if I'm already going to McDonald's. If I'm not using the app to get a discount or use my points or be part of that reward system, I'm being ignorant, right? Like it's a place of, and why did McDonald's find a way to take a customer base that was already clearly loyal country over country, right? Bringing them McDonald's in and decide that maybe there was a technological improvement and then find this way to like drive people that were already drive them into a channel.
So I will tell you thank you for that question, but the first e-commerce that McDonald's did, we worked with a system we put a system in Kuala Lumpur, and they said, hey, that's going to do about $250 million worth of business, because in certain cities in the world, if you're a quick service restaurant, you have to do delivery. Like if you're a bank, you have an ATM. If you don't have an ATM, you're not a commercial, you're some other kind of bank. So in certain cities, we're doing it anyway. We did it, and by the way, when they said to me it was going to be $250 million worth of business, that quickly became $1 billion worth of business. So we knew that there's this desire to people that would interact with us in ways that they didn't already interact with us. And I'll divulge a little secret. I hated my local McDonald's. I didn't want to go to my local McDonald's. I just didn't. It was just like driving in, the parking. It was a hassle. The minute I could get the app and get an Egg McMuffin delivered to me on a Saturday morning, my kids, what do you want? Yeah, no problem. I mean, so we found out, again, that's $25 billion of growth business. Now, mind you, yes, some of us are still going to do digital, but again, like the kiosk, you order more, you tend to interact more, and we do loyalty. I'll give you one more quick thing. when McDonald's, a lot of the loyalty things, points only come in the app. You want to drive it to the app because we reduce costs. There's a lot more we can know about, if not you as an individual, like the buying patterns. There's a lot we get a glean of information about the app. You're not gonna prefer that you use it. Like you can do the mobile app and go to the drive-thru, just give them a code, and it's already paid for. Here's what I tell you, a little news flash. The slowest thing in a restaurant is you. Oh, what do I want? Go to the varsity in Atlanta sometime outside of Georgia Tech. If you do that, McDonald's doesn't do that to you. But anyway, my point is we had to figure out how to get more growth, through the restaurant. It was all about means. And plus now you have to do it, right? If you're in that space, you got to do it. We're good?
Round of applause for Joel, please.